What if Robin Williams' most difficult issues were concealed from view? When Robin Williams' death first made headlines, his hidden journals reveal a heartbreaking truth that will permanently alter your perception of him. Under his contagious smile and boundless energy, Robin was secretly fighting a heartbreaking battle that he had carefully concealed behind his comedic brilliance for years. Millions of people around the world were left in shock, realizing that he was more than just an actor. He was joy, laughter, and pure genius all wrapped into one man. When Robin passed away in 2014, his family learned something that would change his life forever. The world thought that despair alone had drove him to the brink, but Robin's writings would eventually reveal a far more complicated tragedy that even his closest friends couldn't imagine. Scattered in the silence of the night, Robin poured out his deepest fears and his haunting confusion over symptoms he couldn't name, let alone comprehend at first glance. The journals were a heartbreaking testament to the internal chaos he faced every day. The story of his life was hidden in notebooks hidden in the private corners of his home, with dozens of handwritten entries on each page that spoke silently but powerfully, painting a raw, unfiltered portrait of a man desperately fighting a battle he could hardly articulate. Despite being surrounded by people who loved him, Robin frequently expressed his fear of losing his creative spark, the essence that had always defined him, in his eloquently described restless nights and agonizing anguish. As his family dug deeper into the pages, they discovered that Robin had been struggling with more than just depression. He described terrifying episodes of paranoia, intense memory loss, and sudden mood swings, symptoms that went far beyond typical struggles with mental health. One particularly chilling entry captured his despair. Simply put, who am I without my mind? These weren't just passing worries, they were desperate cries for help that silently echoed between ink and paper for a long time until it was tragically too late, but the real destruction emerged. In one heartbreaking post, Robin wrote, "My brain feels like it's unraveling, but no one knows why." He was reaching out into the void desperate for answers that never came. Robin knew that something dangerous was taking possession of his head, but he was helpless to stop it. The sorrow was found in the harsh irony of Robin's reality, where the man who was adored by millions for his boundless energy and razor-sharp wit was slowly losing control of what made him unique. His remarkable and brilliant mind, his worsening cognitive state was chillingly reflected in the shorter and more disjointed journal entries. Even his handwriting became increasingly irregular, as though he was losing hope and power, and only after his death did physicians ultimately figure out who the unknown opponent was. Unaware that Lewy body dementia is an uncommon and violent illness, Robin readily was given a Parkinson's or Alzheimer's diagnosis. The devastating reality that surfaced was evident. The man who brought endless joy to so many had suffered profoundly in silence without the clarity or comfort he sorely needed. Robin Williams had not just decided to leave, a cruel disease had taken him away piece by piece as the journals came to light. His private battle challenged our understanding of his passing and forced everyone to face a painful truth. Sometimes those who laugh the loudest carry unimaginable pain hidden beneath the surface. His story no longer belonged to him alone, it became a tragic reminder to everyone watching to look deeper in order to understand more clearly. When Robin Williams received the devastating news that he had Parkinson's disease, he thought he finally understood the enemy he was fighting. However, reality held something even more disturbing than that diagnosis. He was misdiagnosed, and the true culprit was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Robin's journals did more than just reveal his heartbreak, they also revealed our shared blindness to silent suffering. Now, in order to fully understand the depth of Robin's private battle, we must journey into the terrifying illness that silently took him from the world. A truth more horrifying than anyone could have imagined was revealed by Robin's writings, which were riddled with agonizing scrawls and cries for assistance. It was something far more than Parkinson's disease. Pernicious Lewy body dementia is a terrible neurological condition that stealthily erodes the mind. Piece through suffering piece, the autopsy verified what his diaries had shown all along. Robin Williams was suffering from a condition that neither he nor his physicians truly comprehended. He wasn't only losing his ability to move, rather, he was losing the fundamental essence of who he was, his intellect. Once able to recall entire scripts with ease, Robin now found it difficult to remember even the most basic tasks. His journal entries became more frantic as confusion set in, page after page echoing with frustration and fear. "I don't know who was behind the wheel." Robin chronicled his relentless battle against a force he couldn't even identify, much less defeat. The symptoms came unexpectedly and brutally, and abrupt memory lapses left him bewildered and scared. His familiar surroundings felt dangerous during the quiet hours, and friends quickly turned into strangers as paranoia took hold of him with a cold, relentless force. The journal entries from those nights became chilling testimonies of a man imprisoned in his mind, begging for freedom from a tormentor who had no face and no name. Robin frantically looked for explanations, wondering if he was losing touch with reality itself. "Why is my brain betraying me?" he asked helplessly, seeking answers that were tragically out of reach. The mood swings that follow are swift, erratic, and devastating, with hope abruptly broken into despair. The journals show a man tormented by uncontrollable sadness, erupting anger and debilitating anxiety. Robin, who was known and adored for his boundless energy and relentless optimism, struggled privately with emotions he no longer recognized as his own. He desperately tried to make sense of the chaos within that no one else could see or comprehend. He felt alone, trapped in an invisible battle that took pieces of himself every day. According to medical professionals who reviewed Robin's writings after his death, the initial mistake made him feel even more anxious because he thought he had Parkinson's disease. In desperation, Robin tried unsuccessful treatments. He trusted the diagnosis and heeded the advice, but sadly, every step he took was a step closer to the dark grasp of Lewy body dementia. The medication was meant to reduce the tremors and symptoms of Parkinson's disease, but it instead increased his confusion and paranoia, sending him further into a spiral of despair. The sad irony was awful. Millions had been enthralled by Robin Williams' brilliant mind, but he was struggling to hang on to the one thing he valued most. The man who could effortlessly change into countless colorful characters was slowly losing himself to a vicious thief who was concealed deep within his brain. However, what his journals would eventually disclose went far beyond clinical terms and medical diagnoses. Beneath the clinical EXP explanations, hidden deeper within the pages, were Robin's deepest fears. What Robin Williams feared most was the haunting terror of losing his entire identity, the essence of who he was, and these revelations would prove to be far more terrible than the cancer itself. Imagine waking up one day and discovering that you've changed. A man who thrived on rapid wit, great improvisation, and inexhaustible charisma, Robin Williams had always been an unstoppable force of nature. However, in private, Robin was struggling with something much more sinister than ordinary grief. His journals revealed a terrible worry of losing the fundamental essence of who he was. His internal conflict was cruelly captured in every scrawled phrase, which gradually brought him to the horrifying awareness that he was losing himself. His writing started off with straightforward, nervous concerns about times when he had trouble remembering certain emotions and was plagued by abrupt, inexplicable instances where his brilliant mind would go blank. In the middle of each day became darker, each memory faded more quickly than the last, and these early signs seemed insignificant at first, just distractions in a busy life. But Robin knew deep down that something was wrong. That fear was creeping in, and he wrote compulsively as if words on paper could bring him back to reality. As the months went by, his journals changed into heartbreaking confessions, each entry growing shorter, darker, and more fragmented. A terrifying depiction of his deranged mental state. Robin wrote openly, "I feel like a guest in my own body and I don't know how long I'll be allowed to stay," expressing his worst dread, which was no longer hypothetical but rather his bitter reality. Fear, uncertainty, and despair were taking the place of the lively personality that the world had adored for decades. One particularly heartbreaking entry revealed his internal turmoil. "Comedy is my oxygen, without it I'm suffocating." Robin Williams' entire career was built on his extraordinary ability to act, improvise, and create laughter out of thin air. However, the man who once effortlessly brought joy to millions was filled with despair at the thought of losing those very abilities. The journals not only showed the decline of Robin's skills but also his increasing fear that he would lose the ability to identify his own feelings. Robin was truly afraid of losing what had always made him who he was. Robin, who is renowned for emotionally engaging audiences with his performances, acknowledged that his inner world had changed and that he no longer trusted his emotions, which were beset by confusion and paranoia. His entries expressed loneliness even when surrounded by those who loved him most deeply. Robin struggled privately, locked in an internal war that no one could see, much less comprehend. Perhaps the most chilling moment in his journals was an entry written in shaky handwriting, just a few desperate words scrolled in the middle of an otherwise blank page. "Who am I without my mind?" In those 6 words lay Robin's deepest fear of losing himself, his identity dissolving and his genius slipping away. This was a man who had defined himself through intellect, wit and imagination, now stripped of all certainty, helplessly watching himself fade. His wife Susan Schneider would later reveal the haunting truth Robin couldn't fully express. He wasn't just anxious or depressed, he was losing grip on reality. In those final months, Susan described Robin as living in constant terror, trapped in a mind he no longer recognized. It was as if the Robin she knew, the husband, the father, the comedian, was disappearing before her eyes, leaving behind only fragments of the man she once loved. Yet even in the depths of his agony, the world never saw Robin Williams' agony, but his final journal entries paint a heartbreaking picture of his farewell to life. In the final days of his life, he was locked in a silent, invisible battle that he fought alone, hidden from the public eye, while the world continued to laugh at reruns of his famous movies. Robin Williams was fighting to hold on to pieces of himself, refusing to surrender entirely, as he grappled with the terrifying unknown. He clung desperately to the laughter he had brought to the world despite his immense personal suffering. Robin found himself gradually slipping into darkness as he faced a stranger he no longer recognized in the mirror. He wrote in his once enthusiastic handwriting, which is now shaky and hesitant, as if the words themselves were afraid to appear on the page. Each stroke was an attempt to keep himself grounded in reality and stay tethered to the person he had always known himself to be, but that person felt more and more distant every day, and his final journal entries became a stark record of profound confusion and despair. The jokes Robin used to make with ease were now strewn about, timid, and plagued with uncertainty. He wrote, "I am fading away," one sleepless night, his handwriting nearly illegible, revealing his inner struggle. He spoke of feeling as though his mind had turned against him, a traitor, robbing him of his memories, clarity, and the bright spontaneity that had made him who he was. It was like losing his breath, as if his soul were being drained away slowly and brutally. But even in the midst of this terrible internal breakdown, Robin wrote anguishedly about losing the ability to improvise, the very gift that previously defined his legacy. Between fragmented lines and incomplete thoughts, Robin Williams made a valiant effort to hold on to hope. He wrote about love, pure, passionate love, for his family, his kids, and most importantly, his wife. Tormented by guilt over the burden he felt he had become, he constantly apologized to Susan. His remarks showed a tender guy who was painfully aware of the suffering his disease caused to those he loved most. "I'm sorry, I'm not myself anymore," he said, reflecting the bitter irony of his situation. Robin's legendary ability to make people laugh had so successfully concealed his inner turmoil that no one had anticipated it. One of the most terrifying notes was made by Robin a few days before he passed away. He wrote, "I'm trapped in a fog, feeling like a broken machine, aware that something was horribly wrong but powerless to cure himself. Bleeding through the ink, which is becoming thicker." These eerie words described a man who was alone and isolated due to a disease for which he had no name. He fought an enemy he couldn't identify in silence, one that doctors misdiagnosed, leaving him helpless and in a downward spiral. However, this was perhaps the most memorable message. In his final post, Robin left behind, he wrote a single heartbreaking statement that perfectly captured his last battle. Robin's journals were more than just a sad farewell, they were also his quiet attempt to reach beyond death in the hopes that someone would realize the profound truth he had discovered: mental suffering is frequently silent, misunderstood, and devastatingly isolating. "I'm sorry for not being strong enough," he said, those few words echoing deeply, capturing a heartbreaking power. Paradox, The man who had spent his life uplifting others with humor, kindness, and extraordinary strength, felt helpless in the face of a disease he couldn't comprehend. Desperately, Robin Williams, the talented performer, turned into the mute victim. Robin's legacy would ultimately be characterized by the ability of his words to comfort and heal millions of people long after he was gone, even in his darkest moments, rather than by tragedy. He sought understanding and serenity despite this tremendous anguish. Despite the chaos and suffering chronicled in Robin Williams' personal journey, there was an unexpectedly potent thread of wisdom words that revealed not only his suffering but also his profound understanding of the human condition. These lessons could change lives. Contained subtle truths that showed a way toward optimism despite being frequently tainted by uncertainty and dread. In addition to battling his own demons, Robin was discovering universal truths about suffering, compassion, and the human spirit's tenacity. These revelations, which were concealed beneath layers of grief, were Robin's parting gift to the world. Between writings detailing his battles with memory loss, there is a soft, moving voice reminding us that even when we are overcome by darkness, there is beauty in brokenness and strength in vulnerability. Identity Crisis and Paranoia. Robin wrote eloquently about love, kindness, and humanity's amazing capacity to bear suffering, which is unavoidable but voluntary. He made a poignant note of a restless night. His straightforward yet meaningful remarks mirrored a reality that many people are reluctant to confront. He had a deep knowledge that life would always present challenges, but how we handled them defined us. Despite his perplexity, Robin never lost sight of this deeper understanding, and his ability to express such in the midst of severe personal upheaval, clarity was nothing short of remarkable. In a profoundly introspective moment, Robin wrote, "Laughter is hope disguised as joy." It wasn't just about jokes or comedic relief, it was about finding hope hidden in the everyday, about facing despair head-on and turning pain into a shared human experience. Robin also emphasized the immense power of laughter, not just as a diversion but as an essential lifeline through darkness. Following his death, Robin's message resonated more strongly than ever before, providing millions of others fighting their silent wars with an essential lifeline. Even as his loneliness grew, Robin silently begged the world to see past the masks worn by those around us. "Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about," he warned, adding that these words weren't just an emotional outpouring but rather an urgent message he needed the world to hear. Robin frequently returned to the theme of compassion, urging anyone who might eventually read his words to reach out and notice the invisible suffering of others. Robin's writings finally became an unexpected reminder that kindness might literally save lives. After his mental health passed, he was a beacon of hope, showing others who were lost in their darkness the way ahead. His remarks provided solace to both supporters and admirers. People going through difficult times found a sense of acceptance and connection. If a well-known figure like Robin Williams had gone through such suffering, then maybe they weren't fighting their silent wars alone. By sharing the teachings contained in Robin's writings, the world gradually started to comprehend his true legacy. His journals evolved from being a collection of personal ideas to a source of deep empathy and a manual for anyone caught in the shadows of mental suffering. One characterized by a remarkable depth of humanity rather than just humorous brilliance or cinematic accomplishment. While Robin Williams himself eventually passed away from the overwhelming force of his illness, his wisdom endures as a lasting gift, proving that even in the midst of unspeakable pain, one voice can profoundly inspire hope as the world reflects on his words. Robin Williams left behind more than just laughter and a collection of unforgettable roles. He left behind something inside powerful enough to light the way for countless others lost in despair. There is no doubt that his influence will endure for years to come. The fight for mental health was a silent one. The public finally took notice of Robin Williams' personal troubles. Robin Williams' notebooks were more than just personal admissions, they were a potent catalyst that shook when the pages disclosed Robin's interior suffering in his valiant struggle with Lewy bodily dementia. Society became aware of the terrible reality that mental health was still gravely misunderstood. After years of mental illness being kept hidden and discussed behind closed doors, the debate took a significant turn. The world could no longer ignore the unseen sorrow hidden behind innumerable smiling faces after Robin's remarks broke the quiet and revealed the raw pain that millions of people silently felt but almost ever articulated. Robin's suffering, meticulously recorded in his own words, became indisputable evidence of a pervasive invisible disaster. People who had previously written off mental health issues as being weak or exaggerated were suddenly faced with the harsh truth. Medical professionals and mental health advocates swiftly seized upon Robin's journals, seeing them as a vital opportunity to educate and enlighten. They pointed out that Williams had been tragically misdiagnosed and treated for depression and Parkinson's disease rather than the dementia that was silently eroding his mind. As the heartbreaking details became public, the importance of an accurate diagnosis emerged as a powerful message. Robin's story made it very evident that misinterpreting mental and neurological conditions wasn't only regrettable, but also potentially lethal. If doctors had recognized these symptoms sooner, and friends and family had known what to look for, Robin's suffering might have been lessened. His writing sparked serious discussions about the risk of misdiagnosis, which caused medical experts to re-evaluate their practices in an effort to avert such catastrophes. Major health groups pointed to Robin's tragic struggle as evidence that a comprehensive grasp of mental health was now necessary rather than elective. The public's response prompted real change, going far beyond grief or sadness. Due to Robin's suffering, long-standing stigmas were dismantled, resulting in a rise in transparency. More celebrities began being open about their struggles with mental health. Inspired by Robin's openness, fans opened out about their experiences, shattering the taboo around mental health that had long separated those who suffered from it. Suddenly, the subject was discussed at dinner tables, in classrooms, and in workplaces all across the world. Unknowingly becoming one of the most influential voices in the history of mental health awareness, Robin Williams, who spent his entire career making people laugh, had one unanswered question: could greater awareness have saved Robin advocates? Experts and fans alike struggled with this agonizing uncertainty, but history cannot be changed. His journals taught the world a powerful lesson: mental illness isn't just sadness or fear, it's a profound and complex battle that requires deep compassion, accurate diagnosis, and persistent support. Advocates lobbied for mental health checks to be a normal part of medical examinations, and Robin's suffering sparked social change that went well beyond Hollywood. Once unknown and disregarded, Lewy body dementia gained, bringing much-needed scientific attention to global consciousness. Even though Robin's tragedy was irreparable, it became a pressing call to action that made society re-evaluate its duty to those who suffer in silence. However, in the midst of this awakening, a painful question remained: could more awareness have saved Robin Williams? The answer may never be known, but what is certain is that his suffering, which was tragically concealed until the very end, forced the world to confront an uncomfortable reality. While we cannot alter the past, we can make sure that Robin's tale will benefit others in the future. Imagine learning about the innermost thoughts of someone you care about. Mental health is a battle that no one should face alone. Every page of Robin Williams' writing revealed a man desperate to stay connected to his family even as an unseen force was tearing him apart. His wife, Susan Schneider, described the experience as painful yet beautiful, a profoundly bittersweet moment of truth that revealed just how deeply Robin had suffered but also how fiercely he had loved. When Robin Williams' family first opened his journals, they were unprepared for the raw emotion that poured from the pages of his writing. His words were painful, honest, heartbreakingly vulnerable, and gave them an intimate glimpse into a private battle that Robin had fought silently, bravely, and ultimately alone. Susan found innumerable messages written straight to her private thoughts as she carefully went through the wobbly handwriting, taking in his internal calls for assistance, his perplexity, and his unwavering devotion to her. One of Robin's heartbreaking writings, which he was never able to fully express in person, simply stated, "Susan, you are my anchor, without you, I would drift away completely." Those words became the source of both the journals, offered something equally precious and heartbreaking for Robin's children Zachary, Zelda and Cody, consolation and sorrow, demonstrating the depth of his love even as he slipped from her grasp. Within their father's fading handwriting lay his undeniable love captured forever in words he carefully chose knowing they might one day read them. In these last messages, Robin made sure they knew his love had never wavered. "You three are the greatest gift of my life," he wrote, "even though my mind betrays me, my love for you remains untouched." Robin acknowledged feeling a great deal of guilt for what his illness had taken from them, his energy, humor, and reassuring presence. His kids found solace in those comments, a reminder that the father they had known and loved was never really gone, simply concealed beneath a terrible sickness. Although the journals didn't make their sorrow go away, they provided a significant sense of closure as Robin's family came to terms with the depth of his misery and realized the agonizing reality. Louis's body dementia in the aftermath had taken Robin's terrible fate away from him, he had not chosen it. Susan devotedly declared that he didn't take his own life because Lou's body dementia took it from him. Her words profoundly changed the public's perception of Robin's death, showing that he wasn't a victim of despair but rather a victim of a cruel disease motivated by love loss and the desire to honor Robin's memory. Susan became a relentless advocate determined to ensure others didn't suffer as Robin had. Susan became a fierce advocate for mental health awareness, as did his kids. Through their advocacy, the family made sure that Robin's private suffering would lead to public healing, but beneath this newfound purpose lay the profoundly painful truth that Robin was gone. Robin's journals were full of wisdom, hope, and love, but they also served as a stark reminder of loss. Their transformation into a call to action inspired them to educate others about Louis' body's dementia and fight for better diagnosis, treatment, and compassion. Robin's family's emotional journey through his private thoughts was both consoling and heartbreaking, permanently marking their lives and leaving them changed but determined despite the overwhelming pain of these discoveries. Each word he chose was a powerful testament to the man he was and the husband and father he fervently wished he could continue to be. Instead of ending tragically, Robin Williams' narrative was set to become a strong legacy that would influence countless lives well beyond his own. In the years that followed his untimely death, Robin Williams' legacy continued to reverberate far beyond laughter alone. It became evident that he had touched something deeper, something eternal, within those who admired him. He was more than just a comedian, he was a light in the darkness. His movies, timeless and powerful, from the inspirational bravery of the Dead Poets Society to the sincere compassion of Good Will Hunting, continued to reach new generations as both entertainment and lessons in empathy, hope, and humanity. However, Robin's true legacy went deeper. His tragic battle with Louis' body dementia had awakened society to hidden battles fought behind closed doors, leading to unprecedented efforts toward mental health awareness and support. Robin's performances became enduring reminders that kindness could illuminate even the darkest moments and that humor could bridge pain. Charities that bore his name emerged with the dual goals of preserving his legacy and averting future disasters. These programs addressed the stigma itself. The man who had once felt alone in their struggles started sharing openly, inspired by the man who had unknowingly carried their silent burdens with them. Robin himself faced depression, anxiety, dementia, and mental health issues in private, but through these projects, Robin's pain had finally found purpose, sparking critical conversations. Long overdue fans were deeply moved by Robin's vulnerability, ensuring that his story never faded. Tributes poured forth in an endless stream of gratitude letters, heartfelt quotes, and emotional testimonials revealing how his kindness, courage had changed their own lives. Robin Williams provided a shining example of how beauty and courage can emerge from extreme hardship and can elevate countless people out of their gloom. No matter what people say, words and ideas have the power to change the world, and his own words perfectly encapsulated the spirit of the legacy he would leave behind. Robert lived that reality, fervently believing that stories could unite people's hearts and minds and that laughter could heal. His words and ideas now reverberated louder than ever, challenging and altering a society that had previously ignored the internal struggles that go on behind the scenes. The memory of Robin Williams was defined by tragedy, but it was also illuminated by the innumerable lives he continued to transform, uplift, and save. Robin demonstrated that true legacy isn't found in fame alone, but rather in how profoundly one touches the human soul, and that's exactly what he did. He changed the world one laugh at a time. Whether we remember Robin Williams for his pain or his joy, we should remember him for his wisdom and understanding that laughter was not just entertainment but essential medicine. You might be surprised by the response. The legacy of Robin Williams is multifaceted and intimately interwoven with both heartbreaking and humorous themes. For some, he is a tragic reminder of unseen struggles and silent pain; for others, he is a timeless representation of humor, joy, and hope. His trip revealed the inherent weakness of humanity and served as a reminder that even the most brilliant people deal with darkness, but that struggle also taught him the most important lesson: resilience. Robin's narrative challenges us to address mental health in an open, sincere, and caring manner. His loss taught the world to pay more attention, see past joy and smiles, and identify in the midst of obvious sorrow. It also pushed us to respond with kindness rather than condemnation. Perhaps the best tribute we can give is not whether we remember him for his joy or his sorrow, but rather how we allowed his life to influence our own. Rather than focusing only on his last moments, Robin Williams is celebrating his life choices. He lived life with passion and generosity, making others laugh even as he suffered in private. His legacy encourages us all to continue that same spirit and approach sadness with compassion. Desperation with love, darkness with laughter. Robin himself once remarked, "You are only given a little spark of madness, and you mustn't lose it." That spark is a remarkable ability to touch lives with love and laughter, and that is exactly how he should be remembered. His struggles don't dim that light, rather, they amplify it, revealing a man who is brave enough to continue shining despite his perkiness. Perhaps it's time for us to repay Robin Williams for his pain or his joy. We should remember him for his wisdom and understanding that laughter was not just entertainment but essential medicine. You might be surprised by the response. The legacy of Robin Williams is multifaceted and intimately interwoven with both heartbreaking and humorous themes. For some, he is a tragic reminder of unseen struggles and silent pain; for others, he is a timeless representation of humor, joy, and hope. His trip revealed the inherent weakness of humanity and served as a reminder that even the most brilliant people deal with darkness, but that struggle also taught him the most important lesson: resilience. Robin's narrative challenges us to address mental health in an open, sincere, and caring manner. His loss taught the world to pay more attention, see past joy and smiles, and identify in the midst of obvious sorrow. It also pushed us to respond with kindness rather than condemnation. Perhaps the best tribute we can give is not whether we remember him for his joy or his sorrow, but rather how we allowed his life to influence our own. Rather than focusing only on his last moments, Robin Williams is celebrating his life choices. He lived life with passion and generosity, making others laugh even as he suffered in private. His legacy encourages us all to continue that same spirit and approach sadness with compassion. Desperation with love, darkness with laughter. Robin himself once remarked, "You are only given a little spark of madness, and you mustn't lose it." That spark is a remarkable ability to touch lives with love and laughter, and that is exactly how he should be remembered. His struggles don't dim that light, rather, they amplify it, revealing a man who is brave enough to continue shining despite his perkiness. Perhaps it's time for us to repay Robin Williams for bringing so much joy to the planet. Which hats are your favorites? Comment below. Let's unite in celebrating Robin Williams' legacy.